Okay, so hello guys, and welcome back to Relevant Founders, brought to you by Relevant Software. Relevant is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers world-class standard products for Fortune 500 companies and promising startups. Today, we have Noah Labhart, CTO of Veryable. Veryable is an on-demand labor marketplace for manufacturing and distribution that provides businesses with increased productivity and reduces administrative responsibilities, as well as providing people with more flexible work schedules. Hello there, Noah. Nice to see you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matthew. I appreciate it. Excited to be here and to chat.
Pleasure to have you. Noah, for our listeners, I always like to get our speakers to introduce themselves a little bit at the beginning. So Noah, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. So I'm obviously CTO and founder of Veryable. I live in the States. I live in Grapevine, Texas. Our offices are in Dallas, Texas. I've lived in Texas my whole life, gone to school in Texas. So I'm kind of a Texas guy. I'm married. My wife and I have been married for 12 years. We have 3 kids, 10, 8, and 5, about to be 6. So we have our hands full at home too, and they're all playing baseball this year. So lots of baseball going on in our house. I'm a man of faith. So faith is a big part of my life. Church is a big part of my life. And I'm also an outdoorsman. I like to hunt. I like to fish. I like to be outside. Love animals, wild animals and domestic animals. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me. Grew up in a small town. Didn't have a computer until I was a junior or senior in high school, and then kind of took it off from there.
So obviously being an outdoorsy, as we would call it, and it seems like you've got your hands full. Yeah, you've got 3 kids, you've got the business to run, you've got your hobbies to look forward to as well. How do you balance it all?
That's a good question. The term that I really like, one of our early investors, Brian Spaley in Veryable, he said that startups are about work-life harmony, not work-life balance. And I feel like that's how I try to balance it. Some weeks ebb and flow of, okay, I've got more work this week, or I've got less work this week, or I've got, more family responsibilities this week, or, my mind's about to explode. I need to take care of myself for a second. I kind of just look at the needs for the moment, and obviously, wife comes first, kids come first, and then everything else comes after that. But it can be challenging sometimes to balance it all. I also really like to spin plates and juggle things. So not literally, but I like to be busy. I like to be in my mind, to be thinking about different things too. So I kind of like the lots of things going on.
You're one of those that probably works better when you've got more to do, I guess. Spinning those plates, working better, more productive. Okay, so now obviously you've had many years of experience of dealing with all of this as well, dealing with the pressures and obviously the different challenges at the same time. How did you deal with it at the beginning? Obviously now you've got the experience of knowing how to say, okay, let's stop. I need some time for myself, my kids. How did you do it at the beginning? Do you see a difference?
Sure, that's a good question. I think the best way I'm able to balance things now is to really focus on the great opportunities versus the good opportunities. And I don't always get this right. So, I'm not speaking this from a finished position. I'm speaking it from a work in progress, but looking for the great opportunities versus the good opportunities, and saying no to more good opportunities and yes to more great opportunities. And that could be as simple as, it's going to be a great opportunity for me, or a great thing for me, to get up this morning, to read my Bible, to be still by myself for a second, so that I can start my day centered, instead of a good thing, which would be to sleep in an extra hour, right? So measuring those good or great things, I think, is really how I tried to figure it out in the beginning. And that's how I was getting it wrong in the beginning. So that's what's different now. In the beginning, it was more of just, like I was saying, yes to everything. I was trying to do everything, be everything. And now, after a while, it's just not possible. We're humans. We have to balance everything. And I think that's what helped me do it.
You find it doesn't work, I guess, going at 100 miles per hour all the time is just going to burn you out, and it's not going to produce what you want it to produce at the end of the day, is it? Tell me, let's start right from the beginning. How did you come up with the idea to build Veryable? What problems are you trying to solve at Veryable?
Sure, that's a big question. We're trying to solve lots of problems, but so the origination story, the idea didn't come from me. It came from my partner, Mike Kinder. So we got together in 2016 and got together for lunch. And, prior to that, I'd been working at or I'd started my own development agency. It was building startup solutions. So, I was building the things and I really liked it. And I was like, I got the itch to do my own startup. I kind of want to build my own thing, but I don't really have any ideas. And it's not really my thing. I'm not really the idea guy. I'm the executor. It's kind of changed now. But back then I was like, I don't really have the ideas. And so I talked to a good friend of mine, Ryland Barnes. He's a tech entrepreneur as well. And I was like, hey, if you need anybody looking for a CTO, let's connect us. I'd love to talk to him. And he said, you need to talk to Mike. Mike's got a great idea. And so we got together and sat down over lunch, and Mike pitched the idea to me. So Mike is a longtime manufacturing veteran, operations veteran. He's ran many plants, did so for GE, was a strategic or director of strategic operations at PwC. So he knows this world, did it as a consultant for a long time. And what he saw was the technology. There's a lot of technological advances coming to manufacturing, but without solving the labor problem first, you couldn't take advantage of all the flexibility that was going to be offered by new tech. You couldn't solve the labor problem. So he saw it immediately and he pitched that to me. We sat down over lunch, and having built, startup solutions, I could shoot holes in startup solutions all day. I was like, that's why I don't want to do that one. That's why, that. I had supported manufacturing in my past, and I'd even worked on the shop floor as a college kid. So when Mike pitched me the idea, I was like, this is going to work. This is the one. It's going to work, and we need to go do it. So we kicked it off from there, and that was 2016. And now we're in 15 or 16 different states, 20 to 25 different markets, and growing across the rest of the United States.
Quite a journey, yeah, in quite a small time as well. It's not really that long, is it? So you've got Mike, who is more the manufacturing guy. Yeah, I guess you would be more the tech guy. What was that moment over that lunch? What was that moment that thought, this is going to work?
Sure, that's a great question. I looked into the environment that, he obviously knew the environment as well. I knew the technology, and then having supported manufacturing in the past. So when I worked at Alcon, I worked in the corporate world for 8 years at Alcon Laboratories. Fantastic company, was very well taken care of. Just got the entrepreneurial itch and had to go do my own thing. But during that time, for 3 or 4 years while I was there, I supported manufacturing from an IT standpoint. So I had an IT team, and we supported the engineers on the shop floor and all the assets on the shop floor and all the systems, kind of controlling not only the shop floor, but ERP, MES, things like that. And actually, I'm not sure if we had an MES, but seeing things around those types of enterprise systems. And so I saw the environment, and I was inside the leadership team of the environment. I kind of had the access to those people. So I understood, the challenges, the rigidity, the real focus on cost, and how demand or how issues really disrupted that environment. Ebbs and flows of demand, issues with the production lines, non-conformances, things like that. It was an FDA regulated environment. And so I saw how disruptive those things were, and how flexibility was super important. Go back a bit. When I was in college, I worked on the shop floor I was packaging insulation. So as an operator, what we call them on our platform. And I understood that environment. I understood how, difficult it was. I understood, how the times were changing where people didn't want to stand at the end of a conveyor belt for a company for 30 years. They wanted to do different things, learn different skills. but I understood the hardworking environment and the types of people on the shop floor. And so when he pitched to me, kind of those two experiences combined, I could see like, oh, well, this is providing a win-win for both sides. So businesses can achieve flexible capacity, they can lower their expenses, workers can actually gain higher wages and grow their skill set, and we can pay them every day as opposed to, like a, biweekly or a, bi-monthly paycheck. This is going to work. And so, so it was that moment I was like, that this is going to work. We should do it.
And it did. Yeah, and it very much did. Very interesting. You're saying there, obviously, you've held quite a few positions before, and even you were on the shop floor. Yeah, you've seen what it's like for these people. You've seen what it's like to have boots on the ground. How, obviously, as a CTO, one of your main responsibilities is hiring. Yeah, looking after people and the hiring part of the role. How has that helped you in your role as a CTO?
Sure. That's a really great question. And hiring is such a critical aspect of building in a startup. The team is so critical. I'm an engineer by nature and by profession. I build software, and growing a startup has really opened my eyes to how important people are. And in hiring, the types of people that we hired, when I built my engineering team, a little fortuitous. I partnered with a boot camp here locally called Dev Mountain, and early hires were where we were pulling from their boot camp pool, their graduate pool. And these are individuals that are essentially career changing, right? Like, I've worked in this industry forever and I want to go into tech. I'm going to go to a boot camp, get the skills, and I'm going to get my first role. So there's a little bit of risk there, to hiring someone who hasn't been in the business for a long time, or isn't even a computer science graduate, right? What I found as I hired those people is they had the best view of these solutions, and they're not manufacturing people, they're not individuals that are working on a shop floor, but they had the best view of the world because they came from a user's point of view. Right. They came from a view of a different industry. They weren't, writing code and thinking about the engineering and what can we build and how can we build it better and things like that, which are all important. It's a big part of the equation. But what came with that team and the team I have now is this combined view with, okay, well, how do non-engineers see the world, right? How will non-engineers use this? Whether it be on our business side or our operator side. And that really opened up our design process, our development process, to be, I guess the word's a little more empathetic, right? To people over, engineering something or making something work in an elegant way. It was all about, how do we make this work for the people using it? Which sounds so simple, but it was pretty revolutionary. And that's how we hire today. We look at the people first. We look at their track record. And so when someone comes to me and says, yeah, I didn't start out in coding, I had this long stint of, whatever I did back when, I'm like, well, tell me about that. Cause that is interesting. That is really interesting to me, because that's going to make you a better engineer.
Absolutely. It's that, the human factor, the human part of actually the role, which kind of strips it all back. And we all get so bogged down in what we're doing so much, is sometimes you need that basic kind of view of it, that basic stripped back view of actually how it's going to look and what someone needs, seeing it from a customer's point of view in their shoes. Okay, we will go. We're going to continue a little bit about staffing and team management, because obviously we've already crossed over to this topic. And what tips can you give to those managing distributed teams, if you do manage these kind of teams? What kind of tips can you give our listeners?
Sure. So at Veryable, we're not distributed. We're all in office. However, my prior agency that I ran, it was called TouchTap. We were a mobile development agency, and we were fully distributed. So I had developers, all across the US, some in Canada, some across in Europe, and in I think one in New Zealand as well. And the way I can tell you what not to do, the tips I would say, what not to do. I highly believe that it's really important or even in managing a remote team to get together at least as much as little if possible. But I mean, it's important to get together and see each other. So I hear remote teams like, doing retreats, getting together and maybe doing hackathons or having company, sort of strategy sessions, things like that. I didn't do that at TouchTap. And I think that was a big contributor to sort of a cold culture, if that makes sense. When I say cold, like just non-connective, I had good relationships with the people I worked with, but there wasn't really any excitement about the company. There wasn't really excitement about the mission. There wasn't really a connection to it. It
People
was
just
more of a
performing their jobs kind of thing without any kind of connection.
Exactly. And so I definitely would say, if I could go back and do that over again, I would get us together more often. Still be remote, but like kind of as a special thing. Okay, hey, we're gonna have a company retreat. We're gonna get together. We're gonna get face to face, talk, do the things, and then go from there. With COVID and with the pandemic and things, I know that makes it more difficult. Hopefully, what I'm seeing is we're kind of coming out of that a little bit. So hopefully that helps people. But that's what I would say.
Definitely, it's that bringing together as much as possible to make people feel they are part of the team at the end of the day, isn't it? Feel part of the team and need to be proud in what they're doing. Okay, this being said, obviously you were saying at the beginning there that you're very kind of, let's say, strict with the people that you choose because you want that kind of that human part. You want to know what is more interesting. You don't need to know just about their coding background, but what makes them who they are. As for example, with success, how do you praise success? How do you praise it? Is it something that you need to and should praise within the guys working for you?
Yeah, I would say there's kind of quick praise and then more strategic or formal praise, right? So that there's two ways I look at that. And the quick praise is really like showing your excitement for what somebody's working on, what somebody delivers. So as kind of an example, I went out to one of our engineers, who's one of our engineering managers now. His name's Pat Thibodeau. We were talking one day and I was like, hey, I really got this idea of this thing that we could put in the portal. We don't really have a lot of room in the roadmap right now. I just kind of want to run it by you and see what you think. And it was, around a map and around workers and like showing proximity to a company, how many workers were around a certain company's area. And I was like, I think this would be really cool, and I think people would like it. What do you think? He's like, yeah, he kind of excited about the idea. Well, a week later, he comes back. He's like, hey, Noah, come look at this. And he sits me down and he shows me that he took it on and, did it kind of in some nights and weekends. He's like, I think I got a prototype for this. I think it looks really good. And the quick praise part of it was just, holy cow, like Pat, you did it. Wow, that's amazing. Like you did that. You made that from just an idea, you just dreamt that up and created it, and really showing that excitement, I think was very affirming, not only to, what he had built and the value of it, but my excitement for what he had built as his, as leader. Right. And so I think that's critical, right? To get excited with your team about what they're working on, because without it, you can't have that culture of like, this is really cool. And to be honest, software development is one of the coolest jobs in the world. It's pretty easy to get excited about. It's like, look what you made, look what you did. And then, more kind of strategic and formal stuff. I think it's important to reward people when they're doing well monetarily, give good raises and say, hey, you're doing awesome. Here's a raise, we want to keep you around for the long term. I think, also, kind of surprising people with, I say random gifts, but just things that are a little more personalized. Like, hey, I feel like you're this in the team, so I'm going to give you this gift for your desk that reminds you that I think that of you. Giving people nicknames on the team, or sort of like reminders there. That's a little more, I say formal. It's not as formal, but yeah, I think that's important. I think it's really important to the biggest thing I would say is that excitement aspect, that the short-term praise. That's a really big deal.
Do you know what? That's completely true, isn't it? At the end of the day, one of your employees has spent his time trying to build that for you. And obviously it's something that excites him. Otherwise he wouldn't be spending his time doing it, or so much time and effort. And to see it being reflected back is something that is more really, for a lot of people, than what money could provide. It's something that they're proud of, and they're even more proud that someone's proud of them.
Absolutely.
And again, yeah, like you're saying, with the nicknames and these kind of things, it's all that effort, the tiny bit of effort to show that you put that time in to say, here's a present for you because this is who I think you are. I thought about you. Absolutely. Noah, I want to say that obviously you've got your own podcast, which the guys have to check out as well. It's obviously a very, very interesting podcast for all of the listeners of our channel as well. So if you could just give us a little bit about your podcast, tell our listeners a little bit about it, and then also a question for you, which is a question you always give to your guest speakers. Let's talk about your MVP. Yeah. How have you built your MVP? Let's go from there.
I love that. I appreciate that question a lot. So Code Story is my podcast. It's titled Code Story. I've been doing it since 2019 and around 250 episodes now. And the goal of the podcast is to surface the human stories of tech builders, whether that be CEOs, CTOs, really anyone involved in the creation story of a product, of a tech product. And so the goal of in surfacing those human stories is like to, the early ideas, like how did this even start? Well, what problem were you trying to solve? And then, like you said, the MVP, and I'm going to come back to that, and the MVP portion of it. And then also, from that MVP, trade-offs and decisions like, okay, I can't build that first. I can only build this first, or I've got to take on this technical debt. Roadmap, progression, scaling, team, all those things. And the point is to, through all those kind of major milestones of building tech, what someone went through, and it's not a therapy session, but it's more of like, that person and I are in a coffee shop just chatting like, oh, how was that? How was building a team? What did you look for in them that indicated that they were the winning horses to join you? And so asking those things, and the first half of the interview is all like those stories, and the second half is a little more reflective, like looking back, tell me about a mistake, tell me where something went wrong, or tell me what you're proud of, tell me what influences you, and things like that. So the MVP for my podcast was interesting. So that I mentioned Ryland Barnes, the guy who introduced me to my current partner, Mike Kinder. He longtime friend of mine, college roommate. We were in each other's weddings, still good friends, and still support each other to this day. And I was like, hey, I want to do this podcast. I want to build something like how I built this with Guy Raz, but for tech. I'm influenced by that. What do you think I should ask? Here's kind of my initial list of questions. And he came back with a ton of feedback. He was like, no, ask this, ask about mistakes, ask about failures. Those are where all the great stories. I was like, oh, how? Well, this is great. I was like, why don't you be my first guest? And so we did, he came over to my house and we did the first interview. And it took us 2 hours to get through everything because we're also old friends. So, we just chat for a while. And so we did that. And it took me 6 months to edit the first episode because I was being so picky with because I put music to it, I edit it, and I try to put a little bit of narration and things like that. So it took me a long time, and I was being a perfectionist. And finally, about like month 5, I hired an editor. I was like, look, I got to get on my own way. So for the first two or three seasons, we had an editing team that was working with us. We switched editing teams. Now it's back to just me doing the editing. But I sort of have a system to where it's I'm not getting in my own way. But that first MVP was overly perfected and overly engineered. The engineer in me came out really boldly, and but it was it turned out really good. Everybody seemed to like it, so I kept going.
It is something that sometimes you can get in your own way, and perfectionism, and obviously building anything yourself. Sometimes it's difficult to take that first step. You take that first step, and then okay, you can build from it from there. But it's something that we all have to learn, isn't it? Some first few attempts may be awful. You will look back at it in the future and you think, oh God, I could have done better. But it's those important steps of actually doing it. Okay, very, very interesting. I've got a few more questions about the podcast, which we will come back to at the end. So tell me a little bit more about Veryable. Tell me the MVP of Veryable that you built.
So Veryable, we're an on-demand marketplace for manufacturing labor. And so there's a mobile app side, which is the worker side. And then there's a web portal, which is for the business side. So it's a two-way marketplace, right? Businesses are posting work on the platform, and then operators or the workers are bidding on the work, and they make a selection, and then they get paid through the platform. The MVP for Veryable was an iOS app only, and was a backend built on Parse, which is still open source out there. I think maybe, I don't know, it's been a long time. But when we started it, it was open source. And Parse was an open source mobile backend as a service, Node. It was Node based, and then built on top of Mongo. And so we built it with that. And then when we used a Angular template to build the portal for the business side, which it was rough. The first version, the first prototypes was rough. We got it to where it was working. We tested it in-house. Okay, we can post work, we can pay people. It was built on top of Stripe for the payments, and we were using Stripe Marketplace or Stripe Connect, which is their marketplace product. Funny story about the MVP. So we did our first op. So operators were on the platform. Businesses were posting. We had one business called EXL Logistics. It's nearby here in Dallas. And they posted their work. Operators bid on it. They got accepted. They showed up to work on the first day, which it's our first op. So we showed up there too. And we were going to be there to support everything that they were doing on site with them. And they did the work. At the end of the day, the manager sat down to prove the work and pay the operator, clicked the button, and it broke. And the payment mechanism didn't work, and I was scratching my head going, okay, well, all right, 1 second, let me look into what's going on there. So I actually had to fix the back end and ship the back end. I had to call my lead engineer, Andrew Plan, who's been with us since the beginning. I was like, Andrew, this is what's going on. What do you think? And he's like, I think it's here. Check this. So checked it, fixed the back end, shipped it right there, and he refreshed his page, hit the payment button, boom, worked. We got our first $130 payment through the system. So the MVP portal part was super interesting.
So everything obviously coming with its challenges and unexpected challenges. What for you personally, Noah, over your experience and your journey with Veryable, what has been the most unexpected challenging moment for you?
Sure. There's been a lot of challenges. Startups are full of challenges. You're up to your elbows in issues early days all the time. So there's a slew to pick from. I think what's a really interesting one to talk about is our hypothesis on what was going to be the harder side of the marketplace. So we thought that businesses were just going to get it and sign up, and it's going to be kind of an easy sell because the value prop is very simple and straightforward for a business. And we thought the workers were actually going to be harder. We're going to have to do a lot more work on that side to get them on the platform, keep them interested, et cetera, et cetera. What we found as we started going out and piloting the product is that it was completely flopped. The workers got it immediately. They downloaded the app, got on it. They were like, I'm ready to work. Where's the work? Tell me where the work is. And they stayed interested. They kept checking for work. And on the business side, it actually took a lot more education on the business side to communicate to them that, one thing, we're not temp staffing. right? We don't identify, we're not temp staffing. We're a third labor paradigm. We're not, there's full-time labor, there's temp staffing, and then there's us. Because temp staffing has a place when you need to augment labor. We're not augmentative labor. We are on-demand labor. So we're short-term labor, which is a whole other conversation. But so we thought that it was going to be flopped. We thought that the businesses were going to be easier. They're actually harder. It took a lot more education. Manufacturing, distribution, warehousing, they don't move real fast unless there's immediate value seen. And so you have to get in and sort of tell them where their problems are and be like, this is how this is going to fix this problem. So you kind of have to be consultants in that way. But that was an interesting thing we encountered and had to figure out in the early days.
Interesting. What about most recently? Obviously, some time has passed now. What has been the most challenging moment for you most recently, post-COVID, maybe?
Sure. Here recently, I think there's two challenges really that we're kind of working through. One is sort of expanding the orchestration in our engineering platform, the way our platform is engineered. We're going through kind of a monolith to microservice transition, where we're breaking down, our big backend into microservices so that we can scale with our growth really elegantly, right size all of our services and grow that way. It's going really well, but it's a continued sort of engineering challenge, right? Is to think through, okay, how much effort do we put into retrofitting our monolith when we know that we're going to eventually carve everything off into their own services? So that's been an engineering challenge, which is a really fun engineering problem. Our team loves it, but it's still challenging. The other thing, honestly, it challenges the market right now. The engineers market, right? It's hard to recruit right now. And for many different reasons, but the market is challenging. We're up against the Amazons of the world. We're up against the Microsofts of the world. And, we are a fully in-office team too. We don't do remote work. We think that our teams work best when we're in person.
Interesting.
Not against remote work, but we are more, that's what we decided early on, and it's worked really well for us. And so we stick with that. And that's a different paradigm than what's going on right now, kind of what is expected. And so we have to do a lot more. We have to put a lot more time into recruiting and having those conversations, and finding the right people who are going to come into the office. So that's another pretty big challenge.
What are you doing then for this challenge at the moment? Obviously, finding these engineers, what are you doing to get them on board? How do you find these high quality engineers when the competition is so difficult for them at the moment?
For sure. I mean, the things that we're doing, I think we're still trying to figure out what that formula looks like. But the things that we're doing right now is trying to partner early on with engineers in school. So we're doing a lot more internships with the local schools and schools out of state, bringing people on and kind of training them up in our company. And our team culture is pretty awesome. So interns get in here and they kind of fall in love with the company and they want to stay. Which is great. It's great for us. And so that's been our new strategy right there, is to sort of target interns. But we target schools. We headhunt on LinkedIn. We do a lot of LinkedIn posting. And so far that's kind of the things that we're doing at the moment. But we're still trying to crack that egg.
It sounds actually like a very good approach to it, because a lot of people, obviously we can't speak for all, but a lot of people like that idea where they're going to work for a company which is going to help them grow, which is going to give them the skills and the ability to go from here to here. And that seems like what you do at Veryable there. What I want to ask you, just two more questions. The future of Veryable. Where does its mission stop? Is it going to stay stateside? Is it looking to go further? Where does it go from now?
That's a great question. I can answer to the short term. I'd say the short term goal is to go to stay stateside, but grow across all of the United States. The goal is to really establish our footprint and our brand in manufacturing and distribution in the States. After that, we haven't had a ton of conversation about going international since the early days, but that may start to come up as we grow and establish. What we really want to do, though, what we know we want to do is we want to enable operations managers to be able to visualize, understand, and react to their environment. Right now, we're doing that through on-demand labor. But in the future, what we want to do is do that through many other facets in manufacturing. And that could be around machines, that could be around flow, could be around labor for sure, but that also includes full-time labor, and then materials as well. But to give an operations manager a view of their operation to where they can make more intelligent decisions, that is something we're very passionate about, and something that's sort of on our purview or on our radar. It's a better way to say that for the future. And so that's kind of where we are.
Quite a big task as well. It's going to take quite a lot of work, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so last question to you, Noah. Very interesting for me and all of our viewers, I'm sure. Obviously, you said, I can't remember exactly, was it 250 episodes you've done of your Code Story now? 250?
Give or take.
How and what? Actually, let's go with what. What has been the most interesting or the most valuable information you have received from taking these interviews, from taking these podcasts? What is the first thing that pops in your mind when you think of all the speakers that you spoke to, which has helped you and Veryable on its way?
Oh man, that's a great question. I've gotten so much from the conversation. Selfishly, it's almost like I'm having the tech leaders just coach me through the podcast, and it's really fantastic. I think there's a few really big takeaways. One, how important the team is, and how important people are, how shared that is through tech founders and engineers that are building these really complex and awesome products, and they're engineering and having to solve these engineering problems. And I ask them what they're most proud of, and they say my team. And 99% of them don't hesitate. They're like, I'm proud of the team. And as engineers, we're like, yeah, look at this cool stuff we built, or look at these cool things, and look at this big problem that we're solving. Still, it comes down to the people, right? The people are what's most important, and what creates most pride is that orchestration of a team. And so that's been a huge thing for me, and a huge validating thing, and how much we pay attention to our team here. The other thing is sort of an interesting kind of back and forth between scaling and how you approach scaling. And I think that's helped me think about how we scale here at Veryable. And I'm talking more on the engineering side, but could be on the people side too. On the engineering side of there are ways to over-engineer scaling too early, right? And I think I heard a lot of stories of people. Well, actually, I hear a lot of different stories from people. We tried to over-engineer too early, and it took us too long, or we didn't engineer enough, and so we're kind of fighting this now as we grow, and it's a little bit painful because we didn't spend enough time engineering. So there's a balance there of trying to find the sweet spot of scaling, and so I try to be mindful of that when we're scaling our systems at Veryable. And going from monolith to microservice, or expanding our usage of orchestration and containers, or diving into AWS and thinking about how we can optimize our databases and things of that nature. But I think about, okay, is this the right time to do it? Is it too early? Is it too late? Is it too complicated? Is it the right problem for us to be solving right now, or do we have time? And I think that's been a really big takeaway for me from all those conversations. And again, selfishly, I just get a front row seat to be, oh, how'd you do it? Tell me. I'm like eating a bag of popcorn, going, tell me the stories.
Absolutely.
And it's really fun.
You know, absolutely. You get the first row, as you said, and all of that. It's the your learning experience is something that you can use. I guess it obviously has its challenges as well, because you've got some people saying, I do this, some people saying do this. And you have to find the middle ground of what is right in your opinion as well. So challenges, but most definitely something that helps. And I'm very much enjoying your podcast as well.
Thank you.
So yeah. Okay, Noah, thank you very much for joining us today. It has been a pleasure to speak with you today. We've taken a little bit more time than you promised us, so very much appreciate that.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to press the thumbs up button below. Also, subscribe to our channel to make sure you don't miss out on any future content coming your way in the near future. Also, I really want to know your opinion about this episode, so be sure to leave a comment down below in the comment section. Okay guys, that's all for now. See you soon.